Welcome to Confident, Calm, and Clutch Car Ride Conversations. I'm your host, Valerie Alston, here to help parents and young athletes spark meaningful dialogue about mental toughness, resilience, and confidence. Whether you're headed to practice, a game, or just running errands, this podcast is your go-to for building stronger relationships and lifelong skills. One car ride at a time. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Car Ride Conversations, episode 8. Today, we're going to be talking about transitioning from regular season to postseason. How do you switch gears and apply some of the lessons learned from the regular season into the postseason? As March is ushering in the playoff season of many of the winter sports, especially in college, basketball, hockey, all those things, athletes often face that critical transition from regular season to postseason play. And that demands not only physical readiness and tactical readiness, right, that they've spent the whole season preparing for it, but it's also a significant mental adjustment because the intensity of the games goes up, the competition is consistently harder and better in the playoffs, and essentially it's win or go home at some point in the playoff picture. And so being able to embrace that increased intensity without feeling overwhelmed and being able to maintain your consistency of performance under heightened stakes are essential for success. And so this month, we'll be focusing on playoffs and different events that are going on in March. But today, I just wanted to talk in general, how do you make that mental shift from regular season to postseason? Or if you are a travel ball athlete, how do you make the shift from pool play games or group games to elimination brackets? Okay. So one of the first things that you have to really understand is that there is a shift for either postseason or elimination play because the consequences have changed, right? The game now is win or go home. And while in the grand scheme of things, nothing about playing the game has changed, what's typically changed for people are your perceptions of the impact of that game. Okay. And so one of the biggest things that you have to really do when you switch to playoff or elimination games is elevate that focus and commitment towards the process and making sure that you're focused on the right things. So the postseason tends to amplify the importance of each game. And what that really requires for athletes is to be able to stay really focused and dedicated to their process. And so the first thing I would invite for you is this idea of perspective, being able to keep these games in perspective. All right, so an example of being able to keep things in perspective, last year's NCAA women's basketball tournament, Notre Dame point guard Olivia Miles really exemplified this mental shift. And really what helped her, as she describes it, she was recovering from a knee injury, and she transformed her game from her sophomore year to her junior year by really increasing and improving on her three-point shooting, essentially because she sat out a whole year recovering from an ACL tear. And what she describes, and these are her own words quoted, is that she felt like she didn't really work on anything, just truthfully focused on her confidence. She felt like before she got hurt, she was just thinking too much about how she was shooting the ball, when she was shooting. She was worried about what were teams doing to get under her skin. And they were getting in her head. And she felt like she was just stuck in her head, right? But by being injured and having to sit out for a whole year, she looked at things differently. She says, not everything matters. And if you miss a three, it doesn't matter. And so what happened was this new perspective of not being able to play the game for a whole year because of her injury gave her a much better appreciation for the game and the fact that it is, in fact, a game, right? And so her shot is better because she doesn't think about those every individual shot anymore and about the consequences of each individual shot. She doesn't reflect on the balls that bounce off the backboard or ricochet off the rim because she's able to understand, you know what, that miss doesn't really matter all that much. I could potentially never play again because of an injury. And in her words, so now I have the mindset of just let it fly. I'll put the time in, I put the work in, and it's just showing on the court. And so this idea of having a healthy perspective about what these games actually mean. I work with soldiers in my day job. And I think that's one of the biggest things that will give you perspective on sport A lot of people try to use sport as this analogy of going to war, going to battle with your teammates. But when you've been around people who have actually had to go to battle and had to go to war, it gives you perspective, right? It is in fact different. And so the more you can put perspective on, it doesn't matter how big the quote unquote consequences are for the game that you're playing, it is still just a game. It is still just one match, one tournament, one opportunity to thrive under pressure. And especially as a youth athlete, what happens to you at 14 in games literally has no bearing on the rest of your life. Okay. I can tell you from experience, I've been the one that lost the game winning, was up at bat to make the game winning hit and missed, didn't get the hit, struck out. And I'm still here. I have a thriving life. I'm good. I'm doing fine. I still got to play in college. And it was a state tournament, actually. You have to put things in perspective. Sport is wonderful, and it's absolutely wonderful to be bought into and caring about how well you perform at your sport. But it is not life and death. It is not the end all be all. So the more that you can have a healthy perspective on your playoff games or your elimination games, the better you'll be at maintaining your focus and your concentration, because you're not letting the moment get too big for you. So just stay in the moment. The other thing is really to embrace the increased intensity of those playoff games or elimination games without feeling overwhelmed, right? Lean into it, learn to love it, and lean into that pressure. And the heightened stakes of playoff play or elimination play does tend to change the physiological impact. It can, right? Because of how you're thinking. But if you can really develop strategies to maintain that composure and want to be in those moments, right? That you want the ball in your hands, you want the big moment. The more you want it, you start to love those moments and you're not scared of them. And it turns into excitement instead of nervousness. Okay. And an example of this is University of Houston Cougars men's basketball team from last year, 2024 NCAA tournament. There was a LJ Cryer, who was pretty good player, right? Ended up scoring like 28 points, including 12 in the final minutes of a really close game to secure the victory. And he said his ability to stay calm under pressure was pivotal in advancing the team further into the tournament, into March Madness. And he says and the quote after the game as he was being interviewed, "Hey, we've got a lot of great players. Each one of us are capable, and it was my turn to step up." And so what I love about that quote is it was just my turn, right? People had taken on that lead for other games. And so this game, it was me. I wanted to be there and I took it on. And the more you learn to love that pressure and treat it as fun, because it is fun, right? No moment tests you better unless actual life and death moments, but nothing tests your mettle better than those tough playoff moments, right? You get to see what you're made of. And that is so freaking cool. Okay. And there's going to be times where you're the hero, and there's going to be times where you're the zero. I have had both experiences. Okay. It's part of life, and it's part of competing at a high level. But if you can really learn to love the moment and, yeah, okay, I learned something about myself today, and enjoy that experience, lean into it, you're going to be much more successful in those playoff or elimination game types of situations. Now, the final thing that's really important when you're transitioning from playoff game or regular season to playoff games, or from pool play to elimination play in a tournament, is that you should not change your habits and your routines. Okay. The game is still the game. Nothing about actually performing has changed. Right. Shoot, most of you listening to this has probably not seen the movie, but the movie Hoosiers is based on the Indiana basketball game, but basketball team. Moment in the movie where the team is getting freaked out by the playoffs. And so the coach during practice takes them onto the court that they'll be playing, and he measures the scoreboard, and not the scoreboard, measures the backboard, like the hoop and all that. And he's like, "How far is it?" And then he measures from the free throw line to the hoop. How far is it? And all the guys are saying, like, it's all standard measurements, right? And so his point is that nothing has changed. It's still the same court. Nothing has changed. It's just where we're playing. This idea that whatever sport you play, actually executing the game does not change from preseason, regular season to postseason. You still need to do the same things. Whatever your pregame routine was in preseason and regular season, don't change it. Keep it the same. Whatever your process was for mentally preparing for a game, don't change it. Now, your tactics might need to change because of the quality of the competition or something along those lines. But there's something coach works out with you too that's just part of the pregame planning, okay? So stick to what worked for you to get there. You should not be changing things in the playoffs, okay? So keep it going, right? Keep doing what you were doing that got you there, okay? So I'm going to invite you to have some conversation with your parents in the car. So a quick reminder of the rules. There are no wrong answers here. Just talk, chat, take turns talking and listening. Try to minimize distractions as best you can. And remember that you can listen to all of the questions and then have a conversation, or you can pause after each individual question to have the conversation. You do you, whatever you're feeling. But let's dive in. Let's go into our first questions. For the athletes in the car or who are listening to this from their coach, if you're sitting around a huddle or something along those lines, reflecting on your season, assuming you're going into postseason, or maybe if you're transitioning if you've had the transition from regular season to postseason before, or you're transitioning from pool play to elimination games in a tournament, I want you to reflect on that. How do you mentally prepare for the increased intensity of a postseason game or a tournament elimination game? Okay. I want you to think about that. Talk through it. What might you need to do mentally? I would argue there's no real differences. However, the consequences of the game are a little bit different. So you might be more amped. You might be more stressed, and that's okay. But what do you need to mentally do to make that shift? Okay. And what specific strategies have you found effective for you in the past to stay focused when you are feeling pressure? What helps you stay focused on the process? Parents in the car, can you share an experience where you faced heightened pressure in your endeavors, whether it was sports or maybe it's a work situation or maybe, I don't know, in driving in bad weather with your kids in the car or something along those lines? Right? Can you share a story of a time where you were feeling the pressure to perform really well? And how did you manage and maintain your consistency in those moments? What advice would you offer to help your kiddo handle these high stakes situations? Okay. And our final question for our conversation today, discuss how establishing a pregame routine can aid or help in managing postseason pressure or elimination games pressure. Okay. What routines could be beneficial to implement? And I want you to think not just as the performer, as the athlete, what routines, but think about as a family, in the car ride, in the traveling to the game, when you get up, how you travel. Right? So think about that not just as the athlete, but as the family. And how can you support each other in maintaining these routines and managing stress during these high pressure times? All right, y'all. So that is today's conversation. I hope you enjoyed talking a little bit about that transition from regular season to playoffs and from pool play to elimination games and tournaments. Remember to keep that conversation rolling and let's make those car rides count. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me on Confident, Calm, and Clutch Car Ride Conversations. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a moment. Share it with other parents or coaches who could use a little extra inspiration on the go. You can join my newsletter at www.confidentcalmclutch.com/newsletter for exclusive tips, tools, and updates. Or you could buy my book, Confident, Calm, and Clutch, How to Build Confidence and Mental Toughness for Young Athletes Using Sports Psychology. The link will be below in the show notes. If you have suggestions for new topics that you would like to see or hear about, there is a link in the show notes to share your ideas with me. I would love to talk about what you want to hear and discuss in your car rides. So please make a suggestion, and I look forward to continuing these conversations as we move forward.